Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to day 2 in my own personal Tagapalooza. I'm going to do the F is for Fictionalize tag. This is part of Shawn the Book Maniac's Alphabet Soup series of tags. He's done a number of these. I'll leave a link to this one, his original, down below. Since he tagged me in some of the other ones, he said I was tagged in this one, and I certainly want to do these. I really enjoy these tags. By the way, Tagapalooza is not an entirely original idea, even though, I came up with the name Tagapalooza. If you've been paying attention to Steve Donahue's channel, he's been doing a tag a day amongst the, 30 or 40 videos he makes every day. He's been doing a tag a day over there too, so, certainly not incredibly original to do lots of tags on consecutive days, but, that's where we are. So, the F is for Fictionalize tag. All of these prompts in some ways involve the letter F because, alphabet soup tag. So we go. Prompt number 1, which actually contains 3 questions. F is for Fictionalize. F is for Fictionalize any or all of these. A, your take on autofiction. Meh. I'm not even sure I know really what the difference between that is and autobiographical fiction. I don't think I've ever read any works of autofiction. B, the writer you'd like to write a novel based on your life. That would be our own Mark Nash, because I think he'd make it sound a lot more clever and interesting. And he'd add a certain note of, there'd be a certain amount of, mental processing you'd have to do about my life, which would mean you'd have to think about me more and harder. And who's not a narcissist in some small ways, just because my skin isn't tainted orange doesn't mean I don't have a little narcissism in me. And then C, a work of autobiographical fiction you recommend. I'm going to say the latest work of autobiographical fiction I've read, and that is Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. I read this, I read this in January. I liked it. I didn't know that I think it was great. But then again, I'm not sure that there just weren't some parts of the book that just missed me. I do certainly think it's worth reading. I think this was her first book, and probably worth picking up if you're interested in Jeanette Winterson. So that was prompt number 1 with its 3 questions. Prompt 2, F is for farm. A great book set on a farm or about farming, or one that you want to read. My immediate thought was The Known World by Edward P. Jones. I know this is a real favorite of Shawn the Book Maniacs, and maybe that's why it came to my mind so fast, but this is set in the pre-Civil War South on a Virginia plantation owned by an African-American man who had been freed from slavery and then owned slaves himself and ran his own plantation. It asked a lot of really kind of powerful questions about about all kinds of things in that period of time in American history. So this is a great book, and it is set on a farm, so I would go with The Known World. Let's see, prompt number 3. F is for Frank Franz, Frank Franz Fanny, a writer you would recommend or want to read whose first and or last name starts with an F. Bonus points for first and last name. Well, Steve Donahue stole my answer, in his quest to do every tag within, I think, 12 minutes of the tag being posted on BookTube. He stole my answer, and my answer was Ford Maddox Ford. Now, I believe he talked about Parade Rest, Ford Maddox Ford's books. I think there's a trilogy of books that are called Parade's Rest collectively. And the book that jumped to my mind, and the reason why I'm still going to choose Ford Maddox Ford, is The Good Soldier. This is one of those books that if you look on those lists, of 100 classic novels written in English, or 100 this shows up all the time. And I read it, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. And I would say that it wasn't my favorite thing, but it is a great novel in terms of the ability of Ford to reveal the truth about his characters over a long period of time through the subtlety of the language that the character who's more or less telling, through the subtlety of the language and the approach of the character who's more or less telling the story. And in that respect, it's a masterpiece. It may not have been my favorite book, but I have deep respect for what he was able to achieve in terms of the way in which the story is structured and the way in which he reveals his characters. And it's well worth a read. Let's see. Number 4 is F is for the love of God, an experience of extreme exasperation while reading about a book in its entirety or a smaller section thereof. I have 2 choices here. The first is not going to surprise anybody who watched my video, BookTube Prize video, 3 Women by Lisa Taddeo. I won't go into this, but this book is, to put it in the simplest way I can say, this book is stupid. And then I also wanted to mention Nightwood by Juna Barnes. And I read this, I think, sometime last year. And what frustrated me about this wasn't that it wasn't good. It was that it was really good in some places. And then I just thought pretentiously, self-consciously, too modernistic in other places. Every other chapter is a character is told from the point of view, or is the story of a character who's a doctor, and you know, he's a really unique character in literature, and I think a real achievement. But those sections to me ruined. Those sections to me were frustrating because I enjoyed all the other parts of the story so much more. I did a review on this in which you can see my more full thoughts if you care to look it up. I think that was called "What the Hell Did I Just Read?" I think that's what I called that review video. I found that exasperating. Again, not because it wasn't good, but because some parts of it I thought were just great and beautiful, and some parts were too self-consciously modern, and in that way irritating. So there you go. That was my prompt number. Yeah, that was 4. Prompt number 5 is F is for find a book with a lot of F's in the title. Bonus for more than 2. So I went with This Republic of Suffering. That has 3 F's in the title. This took me a long time. You know, other than the word of in a book title, it's going to be hard to find the letter F in the title of a book. By the way, I think I should get extra bonus points because the author's last name, Faust, also begins with an F. But I read this. This is a book about the way in which Civil War changed our ideas about funerals and funeral rites and grieving. And it really is a great work of history. But it does have 3 F's in the title, and that's why I chose it. Let's see. Prompt number 6. F is for Father, a work of fiction in which fatherhood is a central concern. And I've mentioned this series of books on my channel before, and those are the Patrick Melrose novels. The first two of which, there you go, are Nevermind and Bad News. And these had to deal with the main character's relationship with his father, with Patrick Melrose's relationship with his father. In those books, in the first book, it is revealed what an abusive, sadistic bastard Patrick Melrose's father was as a character, and the damage he then inflicted on his son. And then in Bad News, I believe, we deal with the grown-up Patrick Melrose dealing with the fact of his father's death and the impact that has on him. I think these 4 books are pretty dadgum brilliant. The 5th one, which I talked about before and whose title escapes me right now, I think was a letdown. But these 4 I really think are great. And if you're looking for a snappy, pacey, funny, satirical, painful read, these books are them. And I really think these are somewhat brilliant. And like I said, the first 2 deal with fatherhood and really the impact of what in lots of ways is the worst father almost imaginable has on the main character. Number 7, F is for Finland. A book set in Finland or by a Finnish author you'd recommend or would like to try. Well, I don't think I've ever read a book by a Finnish author. So let's just do a little Google search and see who we come up with. I can type with my thumb. Let's see, if I search for Finland authors, I get Sophie Oksanen and Riikka Pulkkinen. So there you go, Shawn. I'm not saying I'll never read those authors, but I never thought to look up a Finnish author, and I realize that's probably some kind of, failing on my part. But there you go, that's my F for Finland. I did a Google search. I found some Finnish authors. Prompt number 8 is F is for Fangirl, a new or new-to-you writer you're really excited about. So there's no way, if you have a channel like mine, for me to do this and not mention an author over again. And so my first thought was to do James Baldwin, because within the last year or so, I just started reading James Baldwin and have just really been blown away. And I am definitely a fangirl of James Baldwin's writing, but you're probably tired of hearing me talk about James Baldwin, so instead I'm going to say I'm a fangirl of Valeria Luiselli. She has an advantage over Baldwin in that she's still alive and presumably writing. The Lost Children Archive is one of my favorite books of last year. I'm looking forward to whatever she's working on next, and I think there's one title, one backlist title of hers that I will be trying to pick up, and I think she is for right now, I forgot, other than Louise Erdrich, she is for right now probably the author whose books I would pick up in hardback as soon as they came out, because I just couldn't wait to read them. I also read Tell Me How This Ends, an essay in 40 questions about her time working with child refugees who had crossed the border on their own and were seeking a visa asylum in the United States, which is a really powerful nonfiction book as well. And I just think whatever she writes next, I'm probably going to go ahead and pay the hardback book price for. Prompt number 9 is F is for Fling. You loved one book by this writer, but nothing else. That would be Kazuo Ishiguro. I loved The Remains of the Day. I thought it was really brilliant. I picked up A Pale View of Hills, which I believe is one of his earlier novels. Wasn't quite as impressed. And then at some point last year, I picked up what many people on BookTube really think is his best book, or what they like the best from him, and that's Never Let Me Go. And I will tell you that I was pretty disappointed in the book, and I didn't think it was nearly as good as Remains of the Day. And so I would say that is that's the book that he's right now the author who I've read one book of and really liked, and then didn't like others. So I'll probably read another book by Ishiguro at some point, but right now he's an author who I've only really liked one of his books. And then 10 F's for Friends, a novel that satisfyingly explores friendship. I'm going to mention two I've mentioned before, Leonard and Hungry Paul, which I gushed about not that long ago. And then in some ways, I guess the ultimate friendship between two men book, I think, is Lonesome Dove. Wow, the friendship between Augustus McCrae and William F. Call is just an amazing aspect of this book, and it definitely made me cry on more than one occasion. And it's just really powerful and beautiful, and I know lots of people have been reading this recently. Good for them, because this is a great book. So we're also supposed to tag, tag feverishly. So I'm just going to use the old cop-out. If you've seen this, if you want to do it, if I've ever tagged you before, if Shawn hasn't tagged you, go ahead and do this tag. It's fun. This alphabet soup tag thing is a really great idea. Anyway, look forward to your comments in the comments section below. And as always, thank you for watching.